live from Pahrump. This is Tech Talk Taco Tuesday on Tuesday. Yeah, what do you think we're going to share? This is show number 36. This is a questions and call-in show. And for all those of you who are in the chat room and are familiar with George, spelled Jorge, this is George Justice. And he is sitting in tonight. He helps me with the off-road riding school. He's enjoying the retired life out here in Pahrump, riding dirt bikes, and now he walked in. He was the last person to walk through the door, and that means you're the co-host on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. George, we'd like to say hi to all your fans.
Hi, fans. I think I have 6 followers on that.
On
Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, so we will put your handle when we put this up on YouTube.
No, that's not necessary.
We'll put your handle there so everybody can follow you. George goes on some pretty good adventures. You rode up to Alaska this year?
No, Canada. Tuktoyaktuk.
To what?
Tuktoyaktuk.
Right.
I'm not even saying it right, but it's close to that.
So you didn't go to the farthest northern point of the United States?
I've been there before. That was in 2014.
Right.
Just check the list. I'm big on checking the list.
Got it. So you went to Tuktoyaktuk. What was the reason for going there?
Just something to do. A good ride.
Yeah. Talk a little bit closer into the microphone there. So when you're watching or in the live chat room that we have, George is the one that kind of posts up the links to the stuff that we mention sometimes. He's always trying to get me to promote all of my crap. Telling me I don't do enough self-promotion, and 90% of you think all I do is talk about myself. So you can tell George what you think of him, and in the comments, of course. And we will get into doing what we do the best, I feel, is answering motorcycle and motorcycle product-related questions. We have been doing this for, almost more than half a year. We're getting 3/4 of a year now. We're getting better at it sometimes, worse at the others. Still enjoying eating tacos and having a beer, maybe a little bit of tequila. I would like to thank all of the sponsors, specifically my off-road riding school that allows me to be here every week in and week out. See, George? Working on it. That's JimmyLewisOffroad.com. Turn the volume down on that thing because we don't want to listen to me twice.
I think I'm muted, right?
No, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, see, because novice.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. Is your phone turned off too?
They're down, yeah.
So when you want to, what we're going to do is we're going to give priority to callers because we have our new caller hotline that will soon be sponsored. That number is 775-451-3328. George, did you type that in?
No.
Okay, do that quick, like you usually do. That's 775-451-3DBT, and you will get in touch with caller screener Gabe.
I don't have the letters on my number keys.
You don't have to do it.
451-3 what?
You don't have to 451-3328, and you can get in touch with Gabe. And if Gabe feels you're worthy of getting on the show, he'll patch you through. Gabe is our call screener. He's the one that makes the thing that does the stuff behind my head do its stuff, and helps get the videos edited up. We don't know where Logan went. Logan, you wouldn't know if he disappeared because he's quiet and he doesn't say anything. So, and you know what your real job is, George, right?
Write down everybody you offend.
Yeah, write down. No, that's one part of it. The main job is when I get thirsty and I need to have a sip of this, then you just start talking.
Fill?
Yeah, you got to fill.
Okay, more of that I sip, the more I'll pop off. You'll really like that. I think you've seen me in that mode, haven't you?
Yeah. Did Jim drive you down here?
Yes, he did.
Oh,
Got
dear.
a designated driver.
Oh, good.
No zipping tonight?
Oh, well, for my special friends.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
That actually looks bigger in person than it does on the internet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, then we're going to get a black one of those, I hope, pretty soon. That's your friend that's going to help us out with this. You know what this thing does? That's a bell on top. So just in case any of you non-tequila ristos, let's see. If I put it right in front of you, you look prettier on the TV screen. How do I do there?
Yeah, I got a better figure with that bottle.
So, okay, pour yourself some. Just don't spill. It's expensive. Okay, getting right into the flow of things here. We're talking about motorcycles and motorcycle-related products. I almost forgot. I got a couple questions. A guy named Dallas from Southern Utah says, I'm friends with Cole and the boys from Fast Company. I'm a B-class desert racer, and I've worked hard and made some real improvements this year in my riding. I had a pretty good start to the season with a few podiums and ended up finishing first in my class, last 7 races of the year in USRA and National Hare and Hound Series. I also ended up winning points in both of those series as well. I would like to move up to expert in a year if all goes well. Well, Dallas, I hope, since I just read your resume on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, that you get lots of sponsors. I intend to continue racing next year. I'm 5'8" and 180 pounds. I think he's going to ask for sponsorship.
Might.
I got a few questions about my 2018 350 XCF, of course. The bike is essentially stock with the exception of my flex bars.
This is 15. It's an 18.
Oh, 18? Probably my eyesight again. Glasses. With the exception of my flex bars, some protection items, and a revalve by Dick suspension. As I have gotten better at riding and have gotten a few other bikes with different suspension, have ridden a few other bikes with different suspension, I'm finding a few things that I want to change in my setup. Number 1, I'm still on AER forks. That's the air fork that comes on that bike stock. And they seem to do well in most areas except the initial hit and choppy terrain. Unfortunately, that just seems to be the characteristics of the AER forks. I'm going to just pour that right into the microphone next time. Made me thirsty. Have you had any experience with different cartridges like Del Saggio makes or even full spring or cone valve conversions? I'm not sure what route would be the best for the type of racing that I do. When you're talking about the harshness on those forks specifically, and it sounds like you've ridden it plenty, so it's not a break-in issue. A lot of times guys complain about them right away, and then they ride them for 3 or 4 hours, and then they're fine. And it sounds like since you've had them revalved, then they've been serviced. But the fact that you've had them revalved means that I can't even comment on what is causing the problem. Because if they were stock, I've ridden that bike stock, and I know that that isn't necessarily an issue. If it is an issue, then I'm going to blame the balance of the motorcycle. Your rear end might be too low, or your rear end might be too high, causing one of 2 different situations. The first situation, rear end being too low, it takes weight off the front end, and then there's not enough weight to make it work like it's supposed to. Rear end being too high, it packs it down a little bit too low into the stroke, and then it gets harsh in the mid-stroke. It kind of packs down into the mid-stroke, runs in the harsher part of the valving. That's all provided that you have found your, quote, ideal air, spring rate, which is air pressure. So it's kind of like a 3-pronged thing. If it's, definitely play with the air pressure in small 1 pound increments, and find if it starts going away. And if you can't feel it, then do big changes, 5 pound increments, which is quite a bit, and see if you notice one being the better the other, and then if there's a trade-off going in one direction or other. It's all about setup. I did reply to him via email, and I forgot to notice that he did have it revalved, which, like I said, throws everything out because I don't know specifically what you had done to it. And when somebody says, I have a better setting for it, and they haven't watched you ride or they're very familiar with what you are doing, I question that. And because a lot of the companies that do that kind of stuff, they do make parts and they do make pieces and they want to put them in and they want to give you a better setting. And 9 times out of 10, if you take the forks off the motorcycle and you take them to somebody and they come back, they're probably going to feel like they're better, the placebo effect, especially since you don't get to ride it back and back to back. You just know they've been made better. I mean, you paid money for it. It better be better, right? So I'm not dissing suspension tuners, but I sure as heck, before I ever send my suspension to a suspension tuner, know exactly what I want him to do, and it's do this to it so it makes it better. I don't know if that. Is that a good answer?
Yeah, but the world's full of idiots like myself that just don't know any better. And so we trust those guys. We tell them, oh, I'm fat, I'm this, I do that. And we don't know what to tell them. And we give them our $1,500 and we get something back that's got to feel better because we paid $1,500 on it. But I mean, what I liked about, you
just take a sip of this while you're talking.
Sure. You helped me get my 500 kind of tuned in. And we're just talking about playing with the clickers. And I went on a long ride on some washboardy stuff and everything and tuned around with it. And it really made a huge difference. And I was surprised because before that, I wasn't a guy that would fool with any of that stuff. I assumed I got the best thing for what I paid.
Yeah, we're going to get that microphone. Yeah, we're going to get that microphone a little bit more. Actually,
and then Todd Kelly here has a comment along these lines. I don't know if you want me to read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Todd Kelly. I have a 19300 XCW. I have the stiffer springs. The forks have a super harsh hit on square edges. And best solution ? Are the gold valves by Racetech only for MX applications? And then another sentence, I really don't want to fork over, I see, that's funny. Fork, in quotes, over $1,500 for the Slavin's Lucky cartridge inserts. I'm not aware of those. Okay,
so here we're just kind of coming down to parts and things. And no, the Racetech gold valves are not only for motocross. All these suspension guys have their own theories on what makes something work, and they tear apart suspension that has taken hundreds of hours in production development to come to the setting that they come to. It's a generic setting for everybody, and they go inside there and they go, I'm going to change this part, and this or this section. And I've written a lot of that stuff, and like even I was trying to talk one of our kids, one of my test rider kids, who is a very fast expert, out of wanting work suspension. Which, believe it or not, I can probably get him a set through Dirt Bike Test to test and talk about it. And actually, I did reach out to him and say, "Hey, Trevor, you want that stuff?" You know what I made him do? Send me an email telling me exactly what's wrong with your stock stuff to see if this is the right direction we need to go to address it. That's what a good test rider would do, and that's the work he needs to do to make it happen. But so all of these parts, like I said, if you haven't really exhausted the performance capabilities of the stock suspension, and if just going to the stiff springs made it harsh, did your weight determine the stiff springs, or what was the reason for the stiff springs? So we kind of go down. Suspension is very, very personal, and just from when we were doing shootouts and comparisons at the magazine, and we're having kids that were 140 pounds and big dudes that were 230 pounds riding the exact same bike and the exact same springs, and knowing that we could actually, with the clickers and preload and stuff, get the bike to work acceptably for them. Not to say that it wasn't ideal for either of those ranges, but in between, we are getting bikes to work pretty darn good just by changing clickers. And when someone would say, "Oh, it's harsh," then we check we didn't get a lot of people saying it was harsh because we'd always check the ride height, make sure the balance was correct on the bike. And so a lot of it comes back to just very, very simple setup. And I think everybody's just so wound up watching all those idiots on the YouTubes and the internets and stuff. Well, we're one of them too, by the way. Me and you.
You watch more of that than I do.
How do you get your crazy ideas then? Not from listening to me.
Voices in my head and mostly you.
So, there's all kinds of different solutions out there, and there's no way that the manufacturer could make really good suspension at all, right? I mean, you're paying $10,000 for a motorcycle.
No way.
Yeah, no way. It's impossible. No, it's so when we kind of go down suspension row, I'm like a broken record. I'm like, number one, is everything working properly? Is it serviced? Is it correct? Is it and then have you done the little things like check your ride height? And then it's like, okay, yeah, I've done all that. I still don't like it. Have you experimented with what the tuning that's available on its stock will do? Just the clickers. Have you tried the clickers? Have you tried the compression, the rebound? all the different things. And then are you on the right springs? So there's like this kind of series of questions you can run through. And if you haven't exhausted that, before you go to spend, a couple $100 on a part that literally takes a professional to put in there. And then trust me, if you just throw a Race Tech Gold valve in there, you better be putting Paul Theed's recommended stack of shims on top of it, because he's flowing different rates of oil. And, I'm not even that good at it. I'm not good at all. I know good suspension tuners, and I can talk to them, and generally I can communicate with them enough to where they can deliver, what I'm looking for. But they're all plenty happy to put any of that stuff in there for you. So, call them up. Put all that stuff in there. If it works better, let us know.
Well, a point I know you've driven home before is after you get not a whole lot of hours on your brand new bike, just send the shock off to have the oil changed, because there is wear in there and things floating around.
Yeah.
And my 500 went away to George here recently after 8,000 miles. And
that's plenty of break-in.
Yeah, I thought that was good. And if I ever get my 300 back, that shock's coming off and going back to him just for the oil change, and he'll probably put a new seal in there or something.
Yeah, and there's certain times when it's good to change the seals and all that stuff. So, anyways, so that's my rant on suspension. I mean, it's like, have a good tuner, and sometimes they do have good parts. And there's some forks that I didn't like the older KTM 4CS forks. I could still get those to work pretty acceptably, and I would probably myself would probably not spend the $500 or $600 on the parts to make them that much better. The changes to get that. And I knew which parts they were. There was some cartridges that guys made that were a little bit different, and some different valves in the bottom that were a little bit different. And I rode a set of those forks. I'm like, wow, this is pretty good for a 4CS fork, but it wasn't enough to make me want to dive off the cliff and and spend that kind of money. I could actually adjust my tire pressure, and I knew that the clickers were more like mid valves and whatever. And then I didn't like the bike they were attached to begin with, so that was another issue. And so back to Dallas, he had a second question. I'm pretty happy with the power on my 2018 KTM 350 XCF. Got that right? All around rideability of the bike. I'm starting to notice I would like a little bit more bottom end. I'm still running the stock exhaust and tuning. Do you see an advantage in going to an aftermarket exhaust? If so, do you suggest a full system or a muffler? I see a few guys running an SX header with a slip-on muffler. I don't know if this is advantageous or not. Also, if I do any kind of exhaust, do you suggest a retune? If so, who and what do you suggest? Well, I'm going to suggest what I have experience with, and what I have experience with is the FMF full system, Mega Bomb, and then I always typically on bikes that I'm riding off-road run the Q muffler. And I run the Q because to me it feels like it makes the power last longer. In other words, the bike doesn't rev up as quick. The Mega Bomb header specifically, and I know KTM does some stuff with their design that looks a little bit similar to it, and I think that might be what you're referring to with the SX header. The Mega Bomb header gives the bike the feeling, more so the feeling than the actual number will tell you, but for sure it gives you the feeling of more torque and more pull on the bottom, and it gives it it's weird. It makes it smoother and snappier at the same time. Just helps. It seems like it helps throttle response. And I've tried like a couple other different stuff, and the Mega Bomb seems to be the best one at doing that. But you can also kind of get more of that with going to the Power Core 4, the shorter muffler, the one's a little bit louder. But boy, when you start taking the spark arresters out and stuff, then they start revving up too quick, and where you want that smooth, controllable, that good torque and throttle response at the bottom, it all just blows right through that good part of the power and then just starts revving ridiculous and making a lot of noise. So again, it's that's why we spend a lot of time testing the stuff, and hopefully I'm describing it well. My experience is that the other exhaust manufacturer would be Pro Circuit, and I've ridden some of their stuff on. I don't know if I've ridden on 350s, but I have ridden on a 250s, and it just gives it a like just everywhere a little bit more. It's maybe not as noticeable being smooth on the bottom, but yeah.
Are you playing with that pipe on my 300?
The pipes, the 7 combinations
Q or
of pipes that we
whatever
have.
it is.
Well, we have a bunch of stuff to do on that bike with the tuner, with the fuel injection tuner. And then he asked about the tuner, and I would always, if I were going to change anything on the exhaust, I would always have the availability to adjust the fuel because, and in reality, most of the manufacturers of aftermarket exhausts design the pipes that they sell to the public to be used with stock tuning. But that's not to say that just by having the ability to alter it a little bit, you can make it work better and better for you. In fact, before I would even do an exhaust, I would get a fuel tuner and play around with that because you can the changes you can do there, and then if you want to go down the road of getting the complete ignition and have somebody do ignition tunes, and depending how geeky you are, you can do that kind of stuff, kind of like what you can do with the stock Yamaha. Let's see. Yeah, Dallas, thanks for the question. Hopefully we answered your question. I think we touched on it last time, or I don't know if we did last time or how we did it, but that's where we're at. Okay. Next, we look at the
You
phone.
want to drift off of bikes just a little bit more about riding for a second? There's a question on here that you might have
On how to
answers
ride?
for.
Okay, yeah.
So Brian England
Yep.
says, Jimmy, my 16-year-old daughter just crushed youth Ironman at the Starvation Ridge 24-hour race this weekend on a 2006 200 XCW.
I saw that picture
less.
on the internets.
Kid rode all but about 15 hours, naps and food. She's tough as nails. I want to see her continue to progress, but I'm kind of at a loss for chick shredders. Can I say that?
Yeah, chick shredder.
Okay,
You can say anything.
That's politically incorrect.
It is.
For her to hang with and get pro level instruction up here in Washington. Hoping
Yep.
by asking here, perhaps you have a suggested or the word gets out. And I asked him where you located, and he said Tacoma, and you might have something going on.
So
up there, huh?
so with my schools, I actually am going to be collaborating with Paul Neff, who does CISPIS cycles training, and he will be starting up in the spring and summer doing rider training up there. And like I always tell everybody when we start talking about rider training, it's all about the basics. It's all about high levels of having the basics on point, and then the rider having very specific needs and stuff to work on. So, and actually he'll be working with Maria Fosberg, who is also a very well-renowned off-road woman racer. And so that team should be able to handle anything your daughter needs, for sure. I wouldn't even have talked to Paul about training if I didn't totally trust the guy. And he's a ISD gold medalist himself. So not just fast, but he can explain what's going on the motorcycle. So hopefully that helps. And she rode for all but 1.5 hours, George, not 15. You said 15. You might want to tighten those glasses up.
Yeah, the bifocal part's not real good right now.
Hey, congratulations to her. That's one thing I never really did was, I kind of did endurance stuff just because of the stuff I did, but never really like the Ironmans and in the Bajas or the Ironmans in the 24 hours. And I can only imagine how kick-ass that is. I got a question from an Anthony Struck, who is in Zambia. He says, we live in Zambia and are avid followers of your site. My 13-year-old son races enduro.
Is that that's outside of L.A., isn't it?
Zambia? No, it's in Africa.
Oh.
Yeah. And he rides a national level like KTM 85X SX. I am 48 and also race less seriously on a 2019 250 TPI XCW, the finest bike I have ever owned. You feel like your partners, George? That guy?
Yeah.
Lucky you guys haven't ridden a 2020. Uh-oh, wait a minute. I've been following your posts on the 2020 KTM two-strokes and would appreciate if you could include your opinions on the following in particular from a perspective of us older riders. You're going to have to help me with this question, George.
He's only 48. He's not old yet. Look at Jim over there.
Yeah. One bike for all purposes. I would also like to practice on the MX track for fitness. I would appreciate your opinion of the XC versus XCW if you're looking for an all-around bike, trail, off-road, enduro, even some MX. And then also 150 versus 250 TPI. With the advent of TPI on the 150, is the bike becoming an option for us older riders?
Is that even available over here, or is that stuff he can get there?
He's obviously can get it. So 150 versus 250. So it's just how much do you really want to rev it and scream the guts out of it? I mean, for sure, it's going to, 150 is going to feel a lot lighter, but you're just going to really have to rev the bike to get the power. The interesting thing about what changed on the 150, specifically for me as an older guy, maybe a little bit older than you, is that it torques down a lot better than the old carbureted one did. And it's very consistent where the old 150 would kind of bog a little bit. This one seems like the power band not only dropped a little bit lower where it was functional in the RPMs. So, you really got to like screaming the bike. It just may, it's never going to be a 250 and it's never going to even be a 200 for that matter. And then once you start saying motocross, I was really impressed with what I could do on the XCW on the motocross track when we were at the works race that I rode it in. But if you really want the motocross kind of feel, you don't want that kind of wallowy, the kind of loose sort of feel, then XC all the way. You want a bike with the linkage. Actually, it's not necessarily linkage. It's just the XC setup. It's not to say that you couldn't have an XCW set up stiffer to work on the motocross track, but then it's going to work just as bad out off-road, when you get into the enduro and stuff like that. So I would, if I wanted an all-around bike, there's no question I would always go with XC, just because that's what it's designed for. Yeah, they do a pretty good job with that. So, Anthony, hopefully that answers your. I'm glad we have fans in Zambia. We are probably. I'm going to guess that we are the number one motorcycle and dirt bike talk show podcast in Zambia right now. What do you think, Gabe? Yeah, he's giving me thumbs up. Maybe we'll get a call from them sometime. Yeah, it's not a toll. We didn't pop for the toll free number. You got to call in for the regular. Preston Thomas asks, I have the 2019 KTM 300 XCW TPI. What is this? The KTM Talk Hour?
Too bad he couldn't wait a year too, huh?
Oh, man.
His buddy must have told him, grab a 19, George.
Yeah.
Get a 19 6 months later. The 2020
No,
is awesome.
No, you had money burning a hole in your pocket. Yeah, as you drive your Ford Raptor around. What was that, Jim?
I said someone told me to wait.
Someone told you to wait, right. Yeah, I think I did, actually. It just depends on who your friends are. Let's see. It's a great for tight stuff on the second mapping switch, at least for me. He installed the accessory switch. I have had a couple of issues with the starter frying after 7 hours, and I've also heard there may be an issue with cold seizing on startup due to oil lubrication. Okay. The starter issues, frying, that'd be interesting to learn more about exactly what that was. I know the old starters used to need a lot of grease, and you could wear them out if you weren't careful because they were.
Sounds like a clutch problem if he's got to start it that many times in 6 hours. Yeah. Oh, what's his name? I got to apologize to him.
Yeah, his name's Preston Thomas. Yeah. You can use a larger aluminum housing in-tank filter and add an ounce of oil to each gallon of fuel. And he says, do not do this without the larger filter. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back right here, right now. So you're going to...
Another shot.
Yeah, I'll have another shot. No, wait, let me keep talking. You're going to pre-mix your gas on your oil-injected two-stroke. You're fearing... Well, you've watched another internet guy's video. I'm positive that that's where you got that crazy idea. He's bald too, by the way. And believe all the bald guys on the internet is what I always say. The adding the oil, You know what so here's the funny thing is, so on cold startup, generally there's oil that's kind of pooled in the crankcase and stuff. And that's why little puffs of smoke come out of the bike when you start it up cold. And there's plenty of lubrication in there. It's not only properly lubricated, mixing in with the gas and stuff. You got a little bit extra. It's pulled up in the crankcase. Cold season on startup would be due to taking off maybe a little too fast, not warming your bike up. Having to put a different filter in your fuel tank so that it doesn't plug up with oil starts sounding like a whole nother another issue.
But you're not supposed to put oil in the fuel tank, right?
No, I don't think so.
Off here? Or?
I put premixed gas in my 4-strokes for the last ever since they've been fuel injected, just because it was laying around. It's like, hey, here's some gas. I poured it in there. I've not had any problems because of that. But then again, I wasn't pouring in 20-to-1, ratio fuel. I was adding, 2 gallons of premixed gas in with another gallon, and it was probably mixed at 40-to-1. So that makes it 60-to-1. If I'm doing some rough math, maybe. I haven't had any fuel. I've actually, in my garage right now, I have my first fuel tank out of like 7 fuel injected KTMs that I have. My first fuel tank that has a plugged filter. I've never split the filters like guys have had problems. And trust me, we get bad gas out here. I also purchased a better fuel pump as the Chinese one has had issues. What isn't built in China anymore? Do you think the one that you bought was not built in China? Oh, the stock infield fuel filter made out of plastic has a tendency to split and leave you on the trail along with the cheesy pump. So you're telling me you had a fuel filter and fuel pump failure. Anyways, after a few bikes, the bike is ready to roll and more dependable. My 2 cents worth. Preston, you need to get your own podcast and team up with the bald guy. And there's a lot of stuff going on there. I've heard about fuel filter splitting. And I've heard people saying you need to add oil into the pour a little bit of oil, just for safety. And you hear all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But I haven't done that on any of the oil injected 2-strokes, whether it was a KTM or a Beta. I've just run them the way they are. And I take my bikes out onto a dry lake bed down here, and I hold them wide open for a couple of minutes at a time, just to be ridiculously abusive to them. And I haven't had any issues because I don't do stupid stuff with them, but I mean, that might be stupid, but they're designed to run like that. I mean, they run them on dynos, they test them, and they do that kind of stuff. So it works. They work. Let's see. So yeah, if you want to put, extra oil in your tank, yeah, whatever. I don't think you need to. I really don't think I don't think it's going to help anything. I don't necessarily think it'll really hurt anything too much either. So, just don't put the wrong oil in. That'd probably be the best. Hopefully whatever's in your going in your injection system, because I know there's another question here about oil, that I probably can't answer. We'll have to refer to Chris Real. Let's see. Hi, Jimmy. I've read and watched many DBT articles and reviews and really enjoyed them. I imagine you get us all asked all the time about what bike to buy, but I really don't know what would be the best for me and where to turn. George, what should I tell him?
KTM 500.
You sound like a broken record. And I would greatly appreciate any time you could afford to me. I am considering getting a dirt bike. We didn't even get to this part. That's good as a dirt bike for the trail riding, but I don't know which way to go. All the dealers I've spoken with, while supportive, typically want to sell me what they have on the floor. Now he's going to give me some background. Every time I give you a fact, I want you to tell me.
I need to drink now.
Yeah. I want you to get, every time I give you a fact here, I want you to tell me the right bike and if it changes. I'm 57 years young and rode dirt bikes until about 18 years ago. So 40-year layoff. What's the bike?
KTM 500 or maybe a 350.
Okay. I've kept myself in good shape mountain biking, running, and lifting over the years.
GS 1200. Pick it up.
No. I plan on riding trails, quad trails, dirt roads in the mountains and desert air outside of my home in Boise, Idaho.
KTM 500.
I'm a beginner, I feel, since it has been so many years.
Come to Jimmy Lewis Off-Road Training. KTM
There we go.
500.
That's
Ride one here. Rent one and ride one here.
Yeah. I'm 6 foot 2 inches tall and 210 pounds without gear.
Don't put high bar risers on it, but get a KTM 500.
Okay, so right there, that one
Two
just
springs up, right? One in the front, two up in the back, probably.
two rates in the back. 210. No, he's fine. He can do it stock, especially when he's starting to go down beginner. But when you say 6'2", 210 pounds without gear, that really pushes me more to 500 than 350. That's just let's see. I'm finding the best bike to learn on is my goal, as well as minimizing the amount of frustration. I have loved riding as a kid. I love mountain biking, so I felt it was time to get back into trail riding. The bikes I've started to research on here, all 2020 models, by the way. He's not going to be like you and buy one of those old things. KTM 350 XCF, KTM 350 XCFW, KTM 250 350 XCF, Yamaha YZ250FX, Yamaha WR250F, and then there's that other brand. I think it starts with an HUSQ Varn. I can't spell it.
They make great chainsaws and lawn equipment.
Right. And so he was going down the right road. Actually, any of those bikes that I just listed off would all be great, first time bikes. But being a bigger guy, the 500 is not going to hurt. And then when you start talking about, anytime you're going to use it as a true dual sport bike, or if it's just straight off road, then you don't need the 500 that much. So yeah.
But it's a pretty big difference in the 350 and 500. I know, I like that low grunny, and I barely twitch to change something in the bike. And with a 350, I have to consciously kind of, grab a bigger handful or whatever to
yeah,
achieve
it's just torque versus rev.
I mean, I don't use that last 80% or whatever, but
when's the last time your 500 was wide open?
This afternoon, going across the lake bed trying to catch Jim and these guys.
Yeah. Jim, what bike do you have?
It's a KTM 500.
Oh, wow. KTM 500. It's like
2020.
it's like you got to be part of the club around here.
Well, and when I started,
that's why we're not going to have Torture Test Gabe in here anymore, because he rides a DR 200, and there's no way I can be seen with a guy like that anymore.
And I think it's still the case. Aren't the KTM's dual sport bikes still about the lightest thing going?
Yeah.
So if you're older and you have the means, get the lightest thing.
Yeah. And so he also did say he got a chance to ride a KTM 300 XCW a couple times, but struggled with how very responsive the bike was. I think I don't have the confidence and ability for such a motor and power band. Well, then I'm going back to 350 because the 500 has that kind of throttle. Actually,
well, I struggle with the same thing. The way the 300 power comes on, I have trouble getting my balance and the right thing for the. I haven't ridden it a lot.
Yeah,
but I'm more comfortable with how my 500 delivers power for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But
you're saying it's definitely smoother than the 300.
300,
yeah.
That's why the 300's a whole nother bike. I love it. The little bit I've had it. I think you've had it for a month.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it right back after I fix it. He says anytime you give me input would be greatly appreciated. I wish to discuss it over the phone, and I've included my contact info. Oh, stalker. Yeah.
Come to the class, rent one, ride one.
Yeah.
Come in the spring.
Okay. Dave Scott asks, wait, it's which one was it? Dave? Is this Dave Scott? Okay. Good afternoon. I just bought a 2020 KTM 300 XCW and had him update the flash port left the dealership. Thank you, Jimmy, for noticing that. I had a 17 300 prior to this, and I agree with the suspension is the best stock bike I've ever ridden at speed. It could be a little more plush than the slow stuff, but I can fix that. My question is this. Here we go. I read to use JASO FD oil for the injection. I'm currently looking for an oil that I'm going to consistently use. Reading the details on these oils, is there a viscosity I should be looking for that would last better than the others? I know the old roll the eyes question, but I like to look into a little more details as to what to buy. So he's talking about the oil that's going into the gearbox on this bike. And
No. For the injection. Injection. That's what he's
oh,
talking about.
Jeez, FD. Oh, yeah, that's right. Correct. Okay. I saw that the first time I read it. I understand it to be 100 synthetic and JSO FD, but so that's why I got confused about the viscosity of two-stroke oil. This is a question for Chris Real. I didn't know that two-stroke oils were viscosity rated.
Whatever it says in the manual.
Yeah, that's what I was going to defer back to. Whatever it says in the manual. Let's see. There's not much information available on the TPI injection system. I've used Amsoil Sabre in the past at 80-1 in the 17, but it is too thick of an oil to run in the injection system, in my opinion. Also, Amsoil does not have a JSO rating either. They just say it exceeds. So
we learned what JASO means a couple of tech talks ago, right?
Yeah,
it's Japanese
Automotive Society of Engineers, probably something like that. Anyways, Chris knew all the acronyms and stuff for that. So, man, I've poured probably 4 or 5 different types of oil that I know of into different oil injected bikes. They were all synthetic, and they were all ones that I'd used pre-mixing and stuff like that. Everything from the Maxima, what's theirs? The K7? No, what's the Maxima? Huh? No, not the Castor. I did not put that in the fuel. The Maxima. They're somebody will correct me on the form, I'm sure. Super M. I've used some Redline oil that I had access to. I used some rock oil that I had access to. I had some Amsoil stuff that I put in. I don't remember it being called the Sabre. But hey, the cool stuff that I put in there was the rock oil, strawberry